Hi everyone, it is day 9. We're nearly there. So let's get started. We're going to stand, feet hip distance, shoulders wide, upper back wide. Think about the position that you're in, opening through the curves of the spine, including the position of the head. Think about placing the breath. Where do you place your breath? So by now we should be very familiar with placing the breath into the fullness of the ribs and the upper back. We should be very familiar with that feeling of opening through the front edge of the hips by just bringing that pubic bone up slightly, and notice how that slightly engages the abdominals. Okay, into our sways, taking it forward, back to center, taking it back. Are you aware of that switching on and off of those abdominals? Want to hear you all shouting yes at the cameras. So just I find this really quite mesmerizing, just going forward and back. But just find that flow of the movement. It might only be a small movement, but just allow that flow of the movement to settle in with the breath. The breath, of course, into the fullness of the rib cage and the upper back, allowing those ribs to expand a bit like an accordion. They gently move out as you inhale. They gently soften back in again as you exhale. Bring it back to center. Spread out those toes a little bit and let's move into our side bend. So no rotation here. Just sliding into the side bend, maybe adding a turn of the head if you want to look down over that shoulder. There's an option. Adding a little bit more weight into it if you want to, by bringing the hands up, but without, of course, pressing into the head. So we don't push the head forward as we do this. Weight is just placed evenly, just evenly. Get that feeling of opening into the side of the body more than we feel the dropping down, drawing down, compression or shortening of the other side. Remember, you can always do a few more of anything than I do if you feel you're really getting a lot out of it. But otherwise we'll bring it back to center and we'll go straight into those foot pedals. So one arm comes up, opposite knee bends, and we just gently float up and down. Arm is long, shoulders slide down, crown of the head lifts. Try to keep the crown of the head up even as you bring the heel back down again. So can you create a sense of distance between the crown and the head and the heel as you do this? Maybe you want to turn your head just to add a little bit more of a balance challenge. But remember, we are going to be turning the head on our next movement anyway. So if you prefer, keep it at center. Just tune into that balance and all the work in the foot, in the ankle, in the calf, in the shoulder. Bring it back down. Okay. So we don't bend the knees at all now. We move the weight forward, the chin is still drawn in, we lift the arms. You maybe only take the arms forward, maybe you take the arms a little higher, but you don't need to go mad, and then bring it back down, turn the palms back, drop the arms down, slide the shoulders down, turn the head, just slide the shoulder blades towards each other, gently retracting. So are you now starting to find a little bit more balance? Maybe you're feeling a little bit stronger. Maybe you're finding that you naturally slow down your movements now to really feel what you're doing. Maybe you're just noticing a change, but you can't quite work out what it is. So remember here, we don't need to go too high if it means that we splay out onto our little toes. We're trying to maintain a connection down to the ground through the ball of the big toe, the pad of the big toe, all the way through to the little toe, but not solely onto the little toe. And then bringing it back to center this time, and we're going to go straight into that hip hinge. Okay, so from here, we hitch forward at the hip and then come through. So remember, you can do what you like with your arms, but maintain those curves of the spine. Use those glutes. You'll feel a little tightness through the hamstrings. Abdominals still draw in. And you may even start to feel that wrapping around the back as well now. Doesn't take too long before you start to recognize what naturally occurs within the body. Because that's what we need. We need the naturally occurring responses of our body to being off balance or unstable. And one more. And then bring it all the way up. Give it a little shake out, going straight into our first movement after our preparation and mobility, which is our squats. So I'm hoping that you're definitely starting to feel the benefit of these now. We start with that slight hip hinge, perhaps not quite as deep, and then we press back and we come back up again. So as if I was going to sit onto my bench, change my mind and stand back up. And you could see your progression if perhaps you start doing this on a dining chair, and then maybe you go a little bit lower onto the sofa, and maybe you go a little bit lower onto just a touch a low coffee table. Don't sit on the coffee table. Or maybe you can even go down so your bottom just brushes the poof, your little footstool in the living room. As always though, we want to make sure that those knees track second and third toes. So a couple more of these, maintaining that length in the back of the neck. Squeezing those glutes lightly at the top of the movement. Great, and release. Okay, and moving into what has, for some reason, become my least favourite move. I'm sure I'll go through a cycle where it won't be. We're taking 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. Remember, you can go a little bit wide if you need to, but try not to splay your feet out into an angle. All right. All right, get your balance. Think about the chin slightly drawing in. Open across chest and the upper back. Lift the pubic bone, open up those hips. Let's not put all of our weight into the back leg only. Squeeze inner thighs together, draw up through inner thigh into groin, pelvic floor. Those abdominals lightly engage. Now then, is this it? This might be it for you. I feel quite good in this position. If I add anything more, I might fall over, but we will anyway. So let's take the arms forward. So the forward leg, same arm, drops down, ribs gently rotate, look towards the hand behind you, then bring it back to center. So the challenge is to stay stable through the pelvis, the hips, the legs, as you move your ribs. And we're just starting to get a little bit of movement into that rib cage. Now we could add more movement, fluid movement into that rib cage as we start to add a nice easy sweep. So again, notice if you've, it's all going so well, wasn't it? Notice if you've changed your sense of balance through the feet, your sense of evenness through the feet. And then bring it back to center and release. Give it a shake out. Oh, really challenges my right leg, that does. Okay, here we go, other side. Oh, I'm so glad I'm not a spider. Don't have to do it 8 times. All right. Are you ready? Find your initial balance. Don't rush into it. Find your initial balance. Stand nice and tall. Make those tiny little adjustments that just put you where you need to be. And then if it works for you, forward leg, same arm. Arm comes down, ribs softly rotate, look to the hand behind you, keep the shoulders soft, and then bring it back. Still got that slight corset. And our ribs are the mobile unit here, so that's where we place the breath. Or perhaps you want to sweep the arms. Maybe start just sweeping the arms first, and then start to add the turn of the head, the movement of the ribs. Ooh. Oh, really starting to dislike this movement. Guess which movement I should be doing more of? Never do the movements enough that really challenge us, do we? Okay, and bring it back to center and release, give that a shake out. Those couple of little standing movements are challenging to many people, and that's what we want challenging. Okay, bring yourself down onto your mat. Take your time. Just the time that you need to set yourself up into that equal length in right and left sides of the body, pressing the pubic bone forward to establish the soft curve of the low back. Arms are long and down at the side of you. Back of the neck is long. Remember where the gaze should be, where the breath should be, how the pelvis should feel set. That slight drawing of the hip bones towards each other, the little lift of pelvic floor. But perhaps also now beginning to notice what happens naturally when we add movement. So we want to keep the pelvis stable and the ribs from flipping up and out as we move into backstroke. What we don't want to be is rigid. So keep that fluidity, that soft control through the movements. Remember, arm and opposite leg. Or you could take both arms and a single leg. You might even want to do both arms a flexed foot, so pushing out through the heel and then coming back to a point. Always making sure that we've got the one foot on the floor before we set off again. And keep your legs in their lanes. So as you press away, don't let your leg wander away from the line of the hip and the inner edge of the shoulder. Of course, you could do exactly the same thing with just the one arm. And then bring it back to center. Okay, we should finish exactly where we started from. And we're going to keep that pelvis still, so just feel the back of the pelvis just rooting to the ground beneath you, like it was just gently held there. And we're going to go into an alternate knee float. So remember, we start the movement with the up, down, right leg, up, then down, left leg, up, then down. Taking care to recognize the weight, but also the distance from breastbone to pubic bone and rib to hip as we lift this leg. So by bringing the knee up and not bringing it too close, we're not encouraging the back to flatten. Now, for those of you that are very comfortable with that, and again, are perhaps a little bit more familiar, we'll go to the double. So that's the up, up, down, down. So we bring the right leg up. We make sure that we're ready for the extra weight. So don't rush into it. There's no need. Again, find that heaviness through the back of the pelvis. Keep those abdominals engaged, and without being pulled forward, so that back arch doesn't change, we lift that second leg alongside. So just for a moment, we've got both legs up in that position, and then we take that first leg back down without feeling ourselves being pulled. So you should really feel those abdominals naturally engaging as you do that. We don't have to do that. The body recognizes how much it needs to do and will do the work for you. Because this is how the body works. When we go to the supermarket, we don't have to think about engaging the abdominals when we lift up to take something off a top shelf. Our body recognizes that. It happens automatically. So remember, stick with the single legs if that works better for you. But whichever option you're working with, work softly and again with complete control. I'm going to do this one more time, a couple more times if you're working with the singles. And then bring it back down. Just allow those feet, those knees to come really close together. So both feet in one shoe, both legs in one trouser leg. Maybe taking the arms wide, maybe crossing the arms over the chest, but keeping those shoulders down, head nice and still. And with that slightly engaged abdominal area, don't go mad. Let's just take those legs over to one side. So remember, the upper leg is completely carried, held, supported by the lower leg. And we end up just rolling over onto one side of the pelvis and onto one edge of the lower foot. Upper body absolutely still. It's not about getting those knees all the way down to the floor. It is about keeping them glued together though. So imagine you're holding a winning lottery ticket between your knees. You don't want to let it go. So there's no sense of sliding between the legs. We don't feel the upper leg sliding across the left leg. They're just glued. Let's do this a couple more times. And then bringing it back to center, releasing the arms to whatever position they're in, moving your feet a little bit further apart, dropping your knees inwards and allowing your knees to gently windscreen until you're ready to roll over onto one side and come up. Okay. So sitting either, as I am, on a chair, you can sit on the floor, you can sit on a cushion, whatever works for you. Up nice and tall. Okay, chin is drawn in. We take the arms forward, imagine their arms are resting on a shelf. So that means we keep the shoulder down and we keep the arm in the same line. We don't let that elbow wing down into the waist or come up somewhere towards the ear. And moving into that little push me, pull you position, where the elbow pulls back and the opposite fingers reach forward, and that draws those ribs into that rotation. It's like you're very gently wringing yourself out. But as I said before, you might want to just reduce this range of movement somewhat if you have any issues, particularly if it's something like osteopenia or osteoporosis. And actually a really easy option is just to take the arms out of it and just to move into a slightly different, little less weighted movement. Okay, so if you found that for whatever reason, maybe your shoulders get really heavy or it doesn't work for you, or maybe you just can't work it out, then just go into a gentle cross or even a prayer position and focus entirely on that smooth rotation of the spine. But remember that rotation that spirals us upwards, so we continue to lift up and out of our seat. Just do a couple more of these. And then bring it back to center. Give that a little shrug out. And we're going to move into that roll down that we did yesterday. We spent quite a lot of time talking about the roll down yesterday. So hopefully you've watched that at least once, if not a couple of times. Okay, and we will perhaps spend not quite so much time there today. But sitting up as tall as possible, legs straight or bent as you wish. Heels, feet connect to the ground. Now it's difficult to sometimes lift up, but that's what you need to do. So we start and finish in this very tall position, right up onto the bones of the bum. Arms are forward, lightly engaged. Think about the breath, draw the chin in, and as you breathe out, pulling away through that low back, reaching forward with the hands. Just do a couple of these first, and then letting the arms come down a little bit, restacking the spine from the base of the spine to the crown of the head, and repeating. So it's just like somebody's pulling back on your t-shirt and is pulling you slightly downwards. Same time, somebody else is drawing on your fingers, so we're getting this lovely C curve of the spine. Watch out for the position of the head. We don't want to be looking forward because that would just compress the neck. The chin draws in, we put some length in the back of the neck, and then we come forward, we restack, and the crown of the head just lifts at the end. It's like magic. Okay, so that might work for you. Otherwise, you might decide you want to go a little bit further, but try not to lean from the upper body first. Try and pull away from the low back first. Reach those arms forward and then roll to the point where you feel completely in control. There will be a sense of lifting the pubic bone here and then coming through. But the moment you feel that your feet want to pop up off the floor or you're going to fall, stop, work on the return. So get strong in the range of spinal movement that you have first before you try to go any further. So maybe going a bit further works for you. If it doesn't, stay with that smaller range. If it does work for you, then maybe it works for you to go even further still. Slide those shoulders down, watch out for tension in the neck, and let yourself just come all the way down. Return the spine to natural curve. Let the arms come up. Soften those ribs as you let your arms move back. Don't need to go all the way down, just to the corner of the eye. Lift the arms up. Are you one of those people that can take those fingers forward, can soften the chin in, slide down through the ribs, the breastbone, the shoulders? Can you follow your fingers to the tip of your shoulder blades and then pulling the pubic bone towards you? Can you continue to curl in order to come all the way through to restack the spine? Are you that person? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. If you're not, of course, all you do is not force the movement at all. You simply roll over onto the side of the body. You press into your hands. You come up safely and under control. So maybe you just get to the point where you can get to the tip of your shoulder blades. And then after that, all seems a little bit matted together. In that case, you would just roll over, push into the hands, reset your position and start again. Let's do that 1 or 2 times more. Remember, you can always do this again if you want to. But this is probably the movement that frustrates most people. Certainly in the many, many years I've been teaching Pilates, this has been the movement that has really irritated the life out of people when they've struggled with it. It's just one movement. It's not even appropriate for some people. So if it's not for you, modify and then move on. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to move on to our next movement. And our next movement takes us onto our hands and knees. So once you've brought yourself all the way back up, make sure that your head's not spinning, bring yourself around onto hands and knees. So we want to have, just let me get my hair out of the way. We want to have our hands below our shoulders and our knees below our hips. And more or less with the wrist creases and the fingers facing forward. Now what sometimes happens here is people tend to put their weight into their legs. Okay, so you can see I can't really see because of the shadows, but I'm slightly folded backwards here. I've got a bit more of an angle in my knee than I should do. So instead, have that upright line. So knees pretty much underneath the hip bones, hands forward. Now at this point, it's important to say that we need to make sure that we really connect down through the ground with our hands. If you work with me a lot, you'll hear me say this all the time. But the instep of your thumb and first finger, okay, should not lift out of the floor to roll us up. So you don't get this big hollow underneath your hands. So really connect into the instep of the thumb and the first finger. Otherwise we lump way too much weight onto the less supportive bones of the outer wrist. So keep the weight from pushing into your little finger. Shoulders are wide and drawn down away from the ears. The crown of the head is forward, the tail is away. And we have once again re-established the length of curve at the front and the back edge of the body. So we don't want to feel like we're pushing up through the shoulders. We don't want to feel like we're looking up through the chin. From beneath you now, draw an imaginary line from the top of your mat to the bottom of your mat that goes right between the hands, right between the knees. Because we don't want to move from side to side of that line, okay? Shoulders draw down, crown of the head forward, tail away, lightly engage, and then from here, slide away, arm and opposite leg, without changing your body position at all. And then let arm and leg float up. touch it back down, slide it back in, okay? So we slide away, and when we can't reach any further than is natural, so what I don't want you to do is to overreach. If you overreach with the arms, you're going to drop the shoulder down. If you overreach with the leg, you're going to drop your pelvis. So just slide away to the point where you are lengthened without force, and then float up. Touch back down, slide back in. If you had a spirit level from the back, on the back of your pelvis, from hip bone to hip bone, would your bubble in your spirit level stay absolutely still? The temptation can be to lift the leg too high. You only need to lift the leg to parallel to the floor. If you lift your leg too high, you're probably going to twist, and you'll lift that hip point away from facing down to the floor. So those hip points at the front edge of the body stay facing the floor. Now, if I was to say to you, bring your arm up in line with the floor, some of you might find that much more challenging than lifting the leg. The arm seems much heavier here than the legs do. So once again, just taking the leg in line with the floor and bringing the arm just about the corner of the eye, and then bringing it back down again, sliding it back in. Check out the connection to the mat through the supporting hand. Are you still pressing into the instep of the thumb and the first finger? Are the shoulders still sliding down? Are you still breathing? As you extend that leg away and you lift that leg, can you feel a little squeeze into your glute at the end of the movement, at the very end of the movement, when your leg is fully elongated? Do you feel a little tightness in that buttock? Let's do this 2 more times. And of course, keeping our balance so that we don't shift heavily from right to left as we do this. And then bring it back to center. Take the weight back and just take the pressure out of your wrists. The way I like to alleviate the pressure in my wrists is to actually bring the backs of my hands together and then drop my elbows down a little, and then I kind of roll them in and out a bit. You might just want to shake them. You might want to do a gentle stretch in that way. Whatever works for you, shrug those shoulders, maybe come off the knees, but there you go. So table was our next movement, and I've forgotten already what day we're on. Was that day 10? That was day 9, wasn't it? So that was day 9, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 10. See you soon. Bye.